All right, we are now live with the 15th episode of In Tune with Joon. I'm your boy Joon. Hope everyone's doing well today. I have a great panel today of recurring guests, some more fresh, but more than happy to see them aboard. We'll start with our veteran Daria. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Baptiste, another veteran. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me again. Good to see everyone.
Yes, sir. We have our resident protester, Keon. What's up, buddy?
What's up, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for being on.
No problem.
Zara, our fresh but not super fresh personality. How you doing, Zara?
I'm great, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us from the UK. And Danny, our freshest podcastee. Danny, it's good to have you on. Welcome from France.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Always happy to do so.
Oh, damn. Danny from La France.
Yes,
Yeah.
France. So today we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter protests that are going on not only in the US, not only in Minnesota, but around the world. And we wanted to draw from our experiences from the US and from our compatriots in Europe, and talk about what's going on the front lines, behind the scenes, and just overall our thoughts on the events that have happened in the past week or so. And Daria made an excellent suggestion. We're going to be using some heavy terminology today. So let's start by doing a simple Google search and trying to define racism for ourselves. The first Wikipedia entry reads, "Racism is the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race over another." And then the second part of that is, "It may also mean prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against other people because they are of a different race or ethnicity." And I feel like the context that we're using today is more so the second part of that definition. Would you guys agree?
Half, I'd say.
Okay.
I feel like, because sometimes if, actions speak louder than if you do a racist action, does that not make you a racist?
Sure.
For without all the bullshit, without all the rhetoric.
Sure. So are we okay with that definition going forward?
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as we distinguish that racism is, it's like the intentional belief that other people are subhuman. They're subspecies.
Mm-hmm.
They don't measure up to whatever ethnic group. Then yeah, and prejudice just being like, I believe I see a reoccurring pattern in this, ethnic group, right?
Okay.
Like a preconceived
I
opinion.
still think they're human. They're my equals, but they're just blah blah blahs are lazy.
So do we want to define prejudice then?
I mean, it's sort of like a preconceived opinion, right?
As well, yeah. It doesn't have to be preconceived either. It could be just anything that's like making large generalizations to the detriment.
Well, actually, it doesn't have to be a detriment. So prejudice is defined as an affective feeling toward a person based on their perceived group membership. I think that's a really concise definition. We might as well put that in there.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So,
positive stereotyping, of course.
Yeah. Sure. So we have two important words that we've defined already. Do we want to actually? I think it might be important to define institutionalized racism as well, right?
No, I think that's good, Kia.
You sure?
I mean, those are the two big keywords,
Okay. All right.
Because I wanted to do that because if we were going to talk racism when people meant prejudice and things like that, I think we would get, really confused.
Okay. All right. So let's leave it at that. First of all, well, none of us here are black, but I don't think that should take away from the conversation that we're going to have today, because many of us are people of color, and none of us are, pure-blooded Americans here. So we stand in solidarity with people from Black Lives Matter, and as people of color, we face some of these prejudices ourselves. So I think that's an important distinction to make right off the bat. And I wanted to start off with a simple reaction to let's start with the coverage of George Floyd's death. I think that can be considered a spark in the protests that have occurred recently. And if let's just go chronologically, and let's start with people in the U.S. and we'll move on to EU. What was the immediate reaction from, what was your immediate reaction? What was the immediate reaction from, let's say, your family, your friends, people around you? Whoever wants to start can start.
Well, the first thing I saw was the video of George Floyd being pinned down the ground and his neck being tramped on by a police officer's knee. So a white police officer. Don't remember his name. Don't really care about his name. But and that brought a lot of. I was disgusted. I never really thought that we'd come to especially because like 3 years ago, we already had like this whole thing about like the whole movement of I can't breathe, I can't do this, and we're back to the same whole phase all over again. So it just sparked a little anger inside of me, but I did not know that the people would react like this, so I definitely joined in, but I'm not for the extreme violence that's being presented, but I do believe that a riot does start because of a mass of people who have been unheard for many years and maybe centuries, definitely centuries. So I feel like enough's enough, and things need to change. So this is the only way I feel like things can change, because every time someone protests, it's like not the right way to protest. Colin Kaepernick goes on a knee, not the right way to protest. Like we walk peacefully, not the right way to protest. So I believe that there comes a time where there needs to be change, and there hasn't been change. So people have reacted, and I sort of agree with the reaction, but not the full intent of the action.
Okay. We got a little into the protest side of things there, and that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's okay. But just to reel it back in, Daria or Betis, was your experience more or less the same as Keon's? Do you have something extra to add?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like pretty much, I'm guessing all of us saw it. It was all over Twitter. Like, I think it happened, like a week and a half ago, the actual incident, and then it got traction over last weekend. And then that's why this week it got more and more popular, and there were more and more tweets about it. So you kept seeing it, people protesting, telling them arrest the cops, this is murder, and they shouldn't just be fired and everything. So I saw the video and I was like, okay, Jesus Christ, he's not even resisting. He's saying I can't breathe. And there's they literally say, oh, you're acting like a big guy, huh? Act like a big guy. And then they kill him. I was like, wow, this is actually a problem. And of course, it's not the only time it's ever happened. There's been so many. And I was like, yeah, this is just crazy. But also just not how graphic it is, because you don't see blood or anything, but you literally see a person in video going unconscious, and then they're pretty much dying right there, in front of everyone in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's a white police officer putting a knee on this black guy's neck for a forged check, even if I heard he wasn't even forged. He was just the girl was scared at the counter, and so she called the cops.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fucked up, the world we live in, and we already knew it was, but this is just again keep adding fuel to the fire. And then I think now it's just it exploded pretty much. That was the last straw, I think.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I was kind of okay. I learned through a group chat. A few friends made a group chat, and they were like, "Let's go to the protests." But I thought they were talking about the COVID protests, and I was like, "Well, that doesn't sound like them. Nobody wants to go."
Yeah.
I was like, "What are they talking about?" And I'm off the grid. I'm not really on social media, so I didn't really see all the traction it was building. And then a friend of mine was telling me they explain all this happened, and then I went on the news. I was like, oh, wow, but I was kind of skeptical at first. I didn't think it would turn into what it's turned to. I would have been I would have been pretty dismissive at first. Like, oh, people are just gonna post about it and then forget about it.
Yeah, I agree. I would have looked at it from that cynical way as well. Like, okay, another injustice, just like another mass shooting, right? We say thoughts and prayers. There's I don't know, a donation stream, and we don't hear about it until the next mass shooting. And I very much agree. I wanted to bring that in before we move to the EU reaction, but I just thought another injustice. You know, a few weeks prior, there was what was his name, Omari, right?
Ahmaud
right.
Arbery from Alabama.
Sorry. Right. And you know, very similar to how the media covered it, and I think that was 6 years ago, the first Black Lives Matter movement. So yeah, seeing a lot of parallels between that and this. I really hope the reform comes this time, because from what I understand, Trump removed some police reform that Obama put in place. And I think maybe that's why we're seeing the effects of it now. But you know, hopefully real change will come this time. Now I want to move on to the EU people, Zara or Danny. What was your take when George Floyd, the news on George Floyd's death started airing?
I honestly didn't see much coverage in the UK about it, whether that's on social media from friends in the UK on social media and also news channels here. I didn't see the actual video for a while until just a few days ago. And mainly I had been following some of my friends in the US. And they were putting a lot of this stuff out there and a lot of resources. And again, same as like Baptiste, I thought that it was just kind of another news snippet that was just going to go away and people weren't going to really pay attention to it, which, you know, like, I don't post much on social media, and I kind of regret it now that I didn't, as soon as I saw that, I didn't really take it seriously enough. But then after kind of seeing the video really shocked me into reality, I think. And again, it's like, you know, this stuff happens fairly often in the US, and it's only just now that we're kind of seeing it in the light, but it's been happening for years and years and years. And then I felt like I had to kind of share resources, but it's also like the trendy thing to do. I don't want it, like, that's kind of shitty to say, but like, you know, it really hit hard this time. And yeah, I definitely feel it's hard to be away from the US right now. I feel like a lot of people are talking about it here now, but you know, they've never lived in the US, so they don't. I don't give much attention to their opinion, because, you know, there's a lot of shit that needs to be changed in the US, but you know, it's an easy target, and I think people need to talk about the racism in their own countries and everything. But yeah, that was my initial reaction.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we have gotten that out of the way. That's like the sort of initial reaction, and I think it's honest to say that, like, if you really didn't think it was a big deal at first, that just proves how problematic it is in the U.S., how commonplace this sort of widespread injustice is. And you know, I don't think it's a wrong reaction, because if you were to get outraged at every injustice, well, you'd be like depressed or like you'd go crazy. So there's just some things we have to choose to fight our battles with. And luckily, this movement gained enough traction where it's like, yeah, I don't even post on social media that often other than to advertise like when I'm going live on stream. But I felt that this time, this was important to focus on. So directing our attention when we see something is important. It's okay if you're late to the train, if you're not like there right when the event happened. You know, it's not like you need to be called out or wow, you weren't there. You know, it's not a competition. As long as you're spreading a positive message, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, go ahead.
I've been hearing people getting pressured into posting things.
I wanted to address that at one
crazy.
point. I wanted to address that at one point, but I feel like along the timeline, that's like post the reaction to the protests, because that's like the meta of like, now it's like, oh, use your voice. I don't hear you guys posting. Like, there's a lot of that sort of rhetoric. But why don't we go ahead and talk about...
Wait, can we ask Danny how it's been in France?
Oh, Danny. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot about Danny.
I haven't heard what France is saying.
Yeah.
So, it's just starting to get traction here. First time I've heard about the news was online. I think it was on Reddit, and it hasn't, like, it didn't start to pick up until like a few days ago. And you start to see like shows and like talk show, or like kind of like podcast on the news talking about what's happening with the situation and everything. And it's just, it was sad. Like once you see the video, like scrolling on Reddit, you kind of feel anger, but as you guys said, unfortunately, it felt like it might just it'll get some attention and be forgotten after a few days. So it's a good thing it wasn't, and that we're now talking about it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, fantastic.
I'd also quickly like to say that, you know, to address the fact that, you know, a lot of us thought, oh, this is just something in the news and, you know, people will forget about it. But people who are actually scared for their lives every day and can't forget about it. You know, I have like read people's kind of accounts of just every day, what they have to deal with every day and how they act in public every day. You know, it's easy for us to say kind of, oh, you know, this is really, really sad and disgusting. But, you know, it's kind of just a wave of the news. But yeah, just the fact that some people, they don't have a choice to forget about it.
That's a very good point. So that's where...
They don't have a choice to forget.
That's where your privilege comes into place. We ain't the main targets of this. So yeah, it's always important to be mindful of that when events like this are going on. And I think that's where some of that rhetoric that we were touching on briefly, that like, oh, where are your voices now? I think that's part of where that comes from. So thanks for adding that, and thanks for your sharing that, Denny, as well. I want to talk about the protests themselves now. And before we get people's reaction to seeing the protests on the news, I would love it if Keon would share his experience attending the protests in what city specifically?
Fairfax.
Fairfax. Okay. Yeah, go for it, man.
Well, I decided to go to the protests to join my brothers and sisters in the movement because I believe that if I had nothing else better to do, so why not spend my time doing something for the better and for the people? So I decided to go. At first, it was very interesting because I parked illegally in an alleyway because I thought to myself, there's cops all around here. They're not going to, they're not focusing on me. So I parked. And once I got out of the car, there were just hundreds of young people walking towards the intersection where the protest was really at. So while walking towards, there's banners, see people graffitiing everywhere. And the graffitiing really, and I have some cool pictures, but like there were some people like putting kill and all this stuff. So when I was walking towards the protest, it was like, okay, this is a little more intense than it usually is. It seems like it, because you see a lot of these like threats graffitied on walls, and especially on the Grove. So it's just like, whoa, so they really don't care. And then I walk by and there's the bus that's literally taken over, graffitied and sat on. And that's 2 blocks away from the main protest. And I'm in a block where like there are literally people scattered everywhere. Not really like, I don't know, unifying, people like raising their fist stuff, other people just taking pictures, people just like, you know, vandalizing. And then I get into the protest where there's like surrounded by cops, and that's where things started to get like show the true colors of protest, where it's like very chaotic, like people saying, oh, white people, go in front, like show them that you're part of the movement. And then there's people on the roof screaming like, don't listen to the cops, push back. So it was just a lot of different noises going around, but there was still that like centered, like concentrated message. There's like Black Lives Matter, George, say his name, George Floyd. Like there was a lot of things. And then one of the cop cars that were already destroyed, that actually had old cop stickers on it and tags on it, got set on fire.
Okay.
Out of nowhere, just got sent on. I didn't see anything gets thrown, nothing. People were throwing water balls, but all of a sudden, where the police were in the middle of that, surrounded by people, a cop car got on fire. And then people started scatter.
Was it next to a gas station?
No, not that one. And so then I went to that one. And I'm like, it's so weird. There was no protest here. There was nothing going on besides people just like putting their banners off, but there was just a wrecked police car by itself in the middle of the intersection with old tags and old sticker. And I'm like, why did the police leave this cop car by itself right here? There are people literally screaming. And I'm just like, and then you go a few blocks down that way, like towards like away from everything, and there's still more burned cars and more people just scattered around. And it seemed like people were like in CVS, like looting. It was just it was a chaos. It wasn't a unified movement, but there was still that base of unification where people were screaming for George Floyd's name, screaming for justice, and screaming for, you know, change. So yeah, it was just it was interesting. Because it was my first protest too, and I thought it was gonna be a lot more led, but it wasn't. It seemed like it was like every man for himself, and there were people screaming messages to other people, and it was like, yeah. At the end, that's how I felt being in there. But at the end of the day, I mean, they are throwing out their message out there, so I hope the message is clear. But like, there's been so many shady stuff going on, which is like from different groups that have sort of been tarnishing this movement, and it's been interesting. It's just been really interesting to see all these different things that have been piling up, coming about, like the bricks, the planted cars. People like there was a white woman graffitiing in Los Angeles, downtown LA. I think in downtown LA, and there were 4 cops right next to her watching her graffiti stuff. And like it seemed like they were talking to her while doing it too. So it just made no sense to me why they didn't stop her while vandalizing. So it was just it's just interesting to me how things are rolling out and who's getting arrested, who's not getting arrested. Like what are police? When are they taking action? When they're not taking action? So yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
All right, thank you so much for your first-hand account, Keon. I wanted to move on to a second-hand account. Unless, actually, does anyone want to comment on what Keon says before I move on to asking Dario what his second-hand account was of his friend who went to a protest? Okay, Dario, go for it. You have the floor.
Just for a little context, all of our childhood friend, he takes pictures for the city, but that's not why he was there. But he has a city pass, so he could. But he went early. Actually, it's funny. He didn't even end up using the city pass at all. He went early, as a documenter, you could say. And he showed up in downtown first, and it was completely empty. And I was like, "See, I told you. Like it's gonna more towards the evening." And then he's like, I'm going to go to Fairfax. And he went to Fairfax and he's like, okay, things have picked up here. And essentially kind of same thing as Keon. But what was interesting was that he said there was a burning cop car next to a gas station. They set it on fire next to a gas station.
Wow.
And then so you're like, there is a fine limit when you're in. And in France, I was involved in. I mean, I didn't go. Like, I've been caught up in some protests. Like, I don't think it's not that impossible to think a little clearly, such as don't set fire to a car next to a gas station. You have to be really oblivious to do that. You have to be really driven by you have to see red, right, to do that.
Yeah.
But what's up, Keon?
No, I was just saying that I'm gonna send you a video after this, Daria, of someone literally there filming the cop car getting burned, and it's from a different group. Like, there's people who are not part of the group. Like, literally, you can see it's all maneuvered in a minute. They burned the car down. They had at least 6 people. 2 people break the front window. 2 people break the back window. Someone break the back window. Someone threw the kerosene. Someone threw the fire, and they dipped out.
Wow,
no, it was an organized thing. I'm telling you, it's not. I would say, from watching that video and listen to the commentary around the people around that video, and the guy's like literally like pointing out, like, listen to what I said, listen to what this person said, like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I just think and I would say it's like an extreme version of Antifa or something else, but I don't think it was. I think it was something else, because I don't believe that, like you said, someone burned a cop car next to a fucking gas station. And plus, Daria, I'm telling you, that cop car was there by itself prior. There was no cop car around it.
Yeah.
It's literally on its own in the middle of the block.
Even Sebastian has been, well, actually, no, he hasn't. But I've heard people talk about planters. Like some people are planted there, whether for various interest groups, not just government, but definitely government, definitely LAPD, definitely, like, of course, that's like classic protest stuff. But sorry, to get to this back to secondhand account.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Yeah, great. Please send me that video.
I will.
Sebastian, he saw that the fire by the gas station, and then he also, he said, besides, it's kind of contrary to Keon's experience. He said it was chaotic, but he said it wasn't like the areas that he was in. There was no looting for him yet. He was in a pretty much peaceful part of the protest, and that kind of just attests to the. He started out in a more peaceful side of the protest, whereas Keon just went straight into the belly of the beast by accident. So I think that's really interesting. Over a whole area, over a whole city, you have. If it's a whole collective whole, we really are fractured. We really are just like groups of people in the, glued together by one common cause. And I didn't want to cap it off by saying that maybe not having a focus, because when you have a focus and a leader, it makes it easier to I'll use him, I don't mean this literally, but it's easier to shoot him down, right? So maybe the fact with something like in France with the Gilets jaunes, maybe that's the reason why it's lasted this long, is the Gilets jaunes prevented the rise of like a figurehead for the movement. One like that all the responsibility would be placed on that one person.
That's interesting.
They kind of avoided that because they're like, no, we're smarter now. Because when you do that, it makes it easier, whether it happens or not. It just makes you facilitate destruction of a movement, because the apparatus that's running against Black Lives Matter, or the apparatus that's running, it's much more powerful when you have the media, the police department, when you have it all coordinating together. If you don't strategize like that, you can get wiped out pretty fast.
For sure. I'm gonna leave the audience on a cliffhanger here. I want to take our first break. We're gonna add Cameron to the call. We're gonna refresh ourselves, go to the bathroom, get some water, and we'll be back with some reactions to these 2 first-hand and second-hand accounts that we heard. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that wait. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and we're going to be reacting to the 2 stories we've heard on top of adding our third-hand accounts, or I guess second-hand accounts, or whatever we've seen on social media, really, in regards to these protests. So I'll start actually with Cameron. She's new here. She's my good friend, and she said she wanted to react to Keon's story before we move too far. So I'll give you the floor, Cameron.
Oh, I thought it was just interesting. I haven't spoken to anyone that's gone to the protests. I think it's, interesting to see how it's being portrayed on television and, what's being emphasized. And I think just as a viewer, curious to hear what it was actually like to be there and what types of groups of people you saw perhaps inciting violence, whether that be the police, protesters, or maybe outside parties of people coming to kind of take advantage of the situation and incite violence. And I know it's not always easy to tell who's who and who's doing what, but I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that, because, a lot of people are reacting to the looting and people on the other side are upset about people reacting to the looting. And then there are people saying, hold up, it wasn't these people doing it, it's this other group. And, it's kind of impossible to know exactly who's doing what. But yeah, I'm just curious to hear what you might have observed on that front, or what you think.
So what I observed was it wasn't violent. I mean, there were some people throwing water bottles at cops, and then the cops, their reaction to that was to shoot off rubber bullets at people. So that was very interesting. So that would definitely escalate some things. The one person that I really was just observing and who really set a weird tone to the whole thing was this white man on top of a building right next to where people were surrounding cops, and he was just screaming in the megaphone things like, "These fuck the police, don't listen to what they say," and he was calling out police for this police officer right here is hitting a woman with a baton, we should fuck him up. It was that guy was definitely stirring the pot for aggressiveness. But besides that, I didn't see anything where there was violence, unless there was a beat up cop car that was next to the gas station after it was burnt down. People were just kicking it and just putting their anger towards that cop car, towards the cops. But walking away from the whole scene, and once you go towards Beverly Center, you can definitely tell that there were people in their cars ready to loot. You can, and it was sad to say that and to even express that, but people were just hanging out at parking lots, abundance of them, 12 or 14 of them, and just getting ready. It just seemed like there was just too many people at one concentrated place in front of a CVS, and there was other CVSs blocking up. So I would say, and from watching all these videos online of, I said before, the bricks and planted cop cars that are old, I just feel there are different groups definitely trying to stir up the pot and make the BLM movement look bad.
Yeah.
But that's just my theory at the end of the day. I can't really it's just an experience that I felt, and I feel very strongly against I feel strongly towards the fact that there are multiple groups trying to interfere with the BLM movement, and it's pretty sad to say, especially because now we're only talking about looting and violence towards small business owners, and it's again, yes, rioting to an extent is bad, but rioting, to my opinion, is not bad. It's just where your heart lies and what you're trying to change and move. But there's some people with different intents while they're doing this stuff. So
yeah.
Well said. Real quick, Keon, I wanted to see if you could wear some earphones. There's some echo with you, my man. Sorry about that. It's okay.
Yeah, my phone's about to die, and there's no way for me to charge my phone.
All right, just lower the volume as much as you can while you still hear us then. Anyway, so to add to what you guys are saying, I wanted to mention that I'm seeing really sus things from both sides. So what do I mean by that? You have the classic anti-protest stuff from the cops. There are people that are taking supplies away from protesters, like water bottles. Like they're just taking that away from protesters. And it calls into question, isn't protesting a right? Isn't that a freedom you have as an American? Why? I mean, if that is not a direct way of suppressing a protest, I don't know what it is. Like you're like dehydrating them. On top of that, on the other side, I've heard reports of like white supremacists joining in, the looting, and obviously white supremacy and Black Lives Matter are not compatible. They're not one-on-one. Not one-on-one. I don't know what I was going for there, but anyway, they're not compatible, and it's a shame that media coverage is not really distinguishing between these two groups. And I think that's negligence on the media's part, perhaps intentional negligence, right? To keep the status quo. It's like, well, look, they want change, but they're looting and causing destruction and violence. And it's a really classic narrative to spin on the peaceful protesters, which, by the way, Keon, would you say most protesters were peaceful?
I would say at least 80% of the protesters were peaceful. 85% of the protesters were peaceful. Like I'm not gonna lie, the water bottle thing, I understand why police officers would take the water bottle so they don't get the water bottles thrown at them, but it's a fucking water bottle. Like you have riot gear on, you have shield on. Like, I mean, like at a point, like if no one's swinging something at you, like then I mean, like you shouldn't be reacting for water. Like literally, when they threw a water bottle at someone. When someone got a water bottle thrown back at them, like the police officer would definitely shoot something at them. They shoot a rubber bullet or whatever, a hacky sack, whatever the fuck it was out there.
I mean, it's easy to call these rubber bullets and hacky sacks. It's not. They hurt a lot. They like leave bruises. Like it's not like you're going
they don't
paintballing.
Leave bruises. They leave, dude. If it's
you're not going paintballing.
Yeah, bro. Do you see the picture? Do you see the pictures of these people? There's pictures of like bloody heads caved in.
Yeah,
got shot point blank range from these fucking things. Like. It's like
some girl became blind too.
Yeah.
This is why I don't agree with. I was just gonna go straight for the throat here of the subject, but
yeah.
This is why I don't agree with peaceful protesting, and we could get into the whole thing of who started what, right? Oh, but they attacked first, so I think we have enough history backing us, and just 20th century really. You don't have to go further back than that, There's a quote I really like by Sartre, and he is excellent. He's writing on the preface of a post-colonial work, which is it's fantastic. And he says that, like, I'll read it. I have it here. I have two quotes for you today. One by the NAACP, and one by Sartre.
All right, let's hear it.
So bear with me here. He is talking about the use of violence. Against in this context against oppressors, and you could argue that well, I would really LAPD is kind of an oppressive force.
Yeah,
considered oppressors. But so he's talking about violence against it, right? And he said, if exploitation and oppression never existed on Earth, perhaps displays of nonviolence might relieve the conflict. But if the entire regime, even your nonviolent thoughts, is governed by 1,000-year-old, this in colonialism context, by 1,000-year-old oppression, your passiveness serves no other purpose but to put you on the side of the oppressors. And that's a quote I really agree with, because I think that pertains to our context too. Going on social media and posting things, your opinions, right? Any kind of passive effort that doesn't require your presence in the end will do more harm than good, even donating. Because if you're not there to physically support action, if you're not there to physically move things along, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it or how much you support it. It will wean out, it'll die out. So there's a kind of call to arms for the citizenry, I think violence is so demonized in our society for a reason. It's a tool of complacency. No, but civilized people are not violent. Good natured people are not violent. You know, that's, I mean, we don't live in a utopia. Those who are nonviolent will be dominated by those who are violent. That's the sad reality of the human condition in 2020. So now, getting into the nitty gritty, looting and things like that, yeah, I don't really agree with that. So I'm saying, but I'm not saying that the use of violence shouldn't be so cast down upon. That's exactly what what is wanted to destroy a protest, right? Putting curfews at 4 p.m., right? Because the protest turned violent.
I wanted to touch on that. Yeah.
What the fuck else is it going to turn into? I'm not going to march down the street with banners saying Black Lives Matter while you have riot gear, military armed vehicles across the street for me. Walking is really fun. It's good for my health, but it doesn't do anything for the cause. And sorry, just to end my long monologue, I was reading an article with the NAACP, the spokesman of the NAACP of Minneapolis, Leslie Redmond, and I think it's great, just to cap off. And they're saying what you're witnessing in Minnesota is something that's been a long time coming. I can't tell you how many governors I've sat down with, how many mayors we've sat down with. And we've warned them that if you keep murdering Black people, the city will burn. We have stopped the city from burning numerous times, and we are not responsible for it burning now. That's an extremely powerful quote coming from a relatively peaceful, very peaceful organization, the NAACP. That's like the cornerstone of Black resistance, legally speaking, right? They're an institution that serves to protect Black rights in the United States. And this quote almost sounds like they're saying, you know what, you deserve it at this point. Like, the violence that has come is karmic justice, not your form of, not some preconceived notion of justice that you made up to benefit yourself. Anyway, that's
no question.
Another thing.
Let Zara talk.
Yeah.
Another thing that I might want to put into the mix of that is kind of what Trevor Noah said recently about how society is it's an observance that, the government protects us and, gives us certain rights and all of this. But then if that side of the deal isn't adhered to, kind of violence and more intense forms of protest are a way of showing that one end of the bargain isn't being respected, and that how are you to just peacefully protest because that's part of the rules and everything when someone else isn't respecting that as well. So I thought that was, I don't know, I thought that really resonated.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good point. Keon, you wanted to say something?
I wanted to ask Daria, because the looting, if it was more towards big businesses and stuff, smaller businesses, would you be for that or no?
Oh, that's an interesting question, actually.
Because
I've been
I
thinking
would say yes. I'm for that.
I'm not 100%. I'm not opposed to what you're saying. I was thinking about it because at first I'm like, looting is. So here's very quickly my 2 cents on. I think on one hand, looting is really pathetic because it's just like it just really shows people's material priorities over this very human problem that we have. That's the concentration. Like, the fuck you care about 12-pack of Coke? I see there are pictures of people with 12 packs of Coke, going to their car. The fuck do you care about that when people are getting murdered?
Actually, I wanna respond directly to that, Daria. There was a tweet I read. It sounds silly, but it was concise enough to get the point across. And the tweet stated that damaging goods in a capitalist economy is pretty effective way of protest.
That was my second. That was my second.
It's like people value material wealth and goods so much that they're glorified. So by looting and by damaging it, it's a powerful statement.
So that was my my other 50-50 was what you just said. And I thought about it. I was like, that could be very very effective because it's kind of disrespecting the kind of and I'm going to go further. I'm not capitalist, disrespecting the corporatist superstructure that's been institutionalized in this country since the 60s, really. That's a pretty powerful statement too. And a lot of people might say that's unrelated to, you know, Black Lives Matter. You're like, no, it's a variable that caused the murder of George Floyd. That like things are not as disconnected as they seem. So even to go further ahead and say that there are different interest groups at the protest too, I'm not really against that. You know, depending on within good reason. I don't know what the fuck white supremacists are doing there, but yeah.
Right.
But then it also begs the interesting question. If you do have, you can't prevent white supremacists from showing up. You'd have to know who they are, each and every one of them, right? So practically speaking, you can't really, but prevent them from coming. But it would be interesting if we found a way to manipulate, right? I don't really consider white supremacists. I don't really have any regard for how they feel about anything. I'm not a big fan of theirs. But you could, if given that there is a malevolent force that shows up on a protest, and this is a question that was asked in France, malevolent forces showing up, is there not a way that you can manipulate or control it without them knowing? So if white supremacists start looting, for example, is there not a way to perhaps spin that or use that or direct that energy constructively for the cause, you know, without them knowing?
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's a really tough question.
Maybe I went too far there. But yeah, looting could be a powerful statement. Small businesses, it's really sad because they're already getting wiped out by the corporate, and then plus the looting. I don't know why people. Are there many small businesses? Are there even that many to begin with in the areas? I mean, Los Angeles speaking.
I think the majority of the destruction is small businesses, Daria.
But
especially the area
Santa Monica. Like I don't understand.
It's not in Santa Monica. In Fairfax area, it's like small immigrant restaurants, bakeries. I mean, I saw like the restaurant my family and I grew up going to, like with a car on fire in front of it. Also Melrose, small like shopping, like clothing stores, like small owned retail stores that I saw in the news. Yeah, that area does happen to have a lot of small businesses, probably more than most areas in LA. I agree, Santa Monica, seeing the promenade and like probably those big shopping stores, it's a different thing. But I do know the Fairfax district, that is a lot of old family-owned small businesses.
Yeah. So my question for you guys too, if Cameron and everybody as well is, so there are small business, a lot of them getting affected, right? A lot of them, right?
Yeah.
When does that become a narrative tool for the media?
I think it already is.
It already has.
It already is, right? So for me, this is where I have difficulty. I wonder what you guys think. There has to be a way. I don't know why people are attacking small businesses, because if you actually care, if you actually know what's going on,
I have an answer to that.
You know, you should target. Yeah, go fucking loot it, because that's.
But I have an answer to your question. You're somebody who's disenfranchised. You don't own a small business.
Yeah.
Someone who owns any business at all is seen as a part of the problem. They're seen as better off. They're seen as well off, right? So I think it's really easy to make a connection between why small businesses. Now, are they in reality the source of the issue? I don't think that people would make that argument. Or should they be targeted? I don't think people would make that argument. Obviously, we just discussed peaceful versus not violent protest. But it's going to happen. How do you prevent it? I have no idea. I don't think you prevent it. I think you start tackling the issue. I think that's the solution. You know,
I think the thing you were saying about the media is so interesting, because I don't visit a lot of conservative media news sites. Sometimes I do, just out of interest, but on my phone, I got a news alert from Fox News. And it was a story about a Minnesota business owner a black owner that has been saving his whole life, gets his bar burned down and loses life savings. And it's like, these are the things that they're highlighting. And that is so specific. And that is such a weaponization and such a distraction from what's going on, and to have that be the headline is just infuriating. And I went on and I was reading the comments because I wanted to torture myself and get super angry. And it's just all these people like, this is a disgrace, like killing their own, hurting their own. And also then that like dehumanization of the people that are in these protests. I don't know. It's crazy. I also saw on Snapchat and Instagram, some of my friends that live in Oakland were going around and putting like taping up papers on different businesses that said like Black owned, like immigrant owned, to like try to
That's big brain.
those places. Yeah.
That's fast.
I agree. I know. I agree. I saw that and I was like, that's so smart. And hopefully someone will take pause before seeing that and be like, oh, this is a small Black
I'm legit
business.
gonna tell my mom to do that. She was concerned about people looting her dental office and stuff like that. I'm legit gonna tell her to put immigrant owned. And, like,
yeah, I mean, it
hope for the
couldn't hurt.
best.
I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I feel like if
That's
people don't know, they just go with, it doesn't matter. And the grand, because the grand wave of things are probably doing more good than bad. And then they'll loot your mom's office and be like, oh.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a controversial issue I wanted to bring up. What do you guys think about? Just to tell you, I'm not really clear on how I feel about this. But I was thinking about it. I was torturing myself with it because I think it's an interesting question. If these protests keep going and escalating, and we start seeing we start seeing real change from policymakers that are influenced by these protests, right? If the momentum keeps snowballing, there are going to be more and more casualties. There will be more and more small business destructions. There will be more, all the stuff we don't want. It's going to be included. It comes with the package. That's how it is, right?
Yeah.
So the question that's been torturing me is that not a necessary casualty? Is that not? It's sad. It's terrible. Some people lose their livelihood. Would I be speaking like that if I was a small business owner? Given all these variables, is that not the grand comedy of things? Is that not a necessary casualty?
Zara's unmuted herself, so I feel like she wants to answer. If I'm wrong, I have an answer.
I was just gonna throw in another kind of little story that I found through social media about these two big white guys who are obviously quite on the right side of things, as in Republican side of things, who had huge guns strapped to their chest and who were standing outside small businesses. I believe this was in Minneapolis. And they were they said that they really, felt that these protests should be happening and they supported the people who are protesting and there should be justice. But they were also standing out there protecting these small businesses and saying, but, we have the right to bear arms and we're protecting our community. And, this is the reason why we want to have the right to bear arms, because you can't trust the police to support your best
libertarian
interests.
alert.
Yeah. So it's like one of those situations where it's like, on the right, it's really easy also for us to demonize the right. But then there are also people where it's like, I wouldn't necessarily agree, just because I don't necessarily think that we should take this kind of, take the situation into our own hands kind of thing. But it's also interesting because I feel like their hearts are in the right place and everything. So
it's beyond politics, right?
Yeah, I think it's a humanity issue. And I wanted to answer Daria's question. I do think it's a necessary evil. I like you put it yourself. Peaceful protesting can only go so far. Thoughts and prayers. What did that do for did we get an assault weapons ban? Or do we have better gun control? To some extent, not really. Mass shootings can still occur, and they have. You need to be loud with your voice and do what you can within reason, right? Now, I'm not advocating for violence, but like you said, it comes with the package. it's a part of change. And I think it's an ingredient for systemic change for sure. You don't have systemic change without like some major spark, and I think that violence is a part of that, unfortunately, but it is.
I agree with that.
Also, attacking kind of the American dream is kind of such a core way of getting people's attention. Small business owners are kind of
That's very
living in
true.
the American dream, and then unfortunately, when you burn them down, it's kind of the core of like the American capitalist society where you can really get people's attention.
Wow.
My fear there is that the small business owners would retaliate against the movement or stop supporting it as a result. And
that happened in France against the Gilets jaunes. There was the I forgot what the blue. I forgot their name in French. Forgive me.
Denny, maybe you can help.
Or the red scarves. Les écharpes rouges, no? Danny.
I don't. What did they do?
There was small business owners that actually got together and that were posted outside and their business, and they said if the Gilets jaunes attack, start looting or trying to set fire to our business, we will retaliate, even though we're kind of on their side. So
yeah, I see.
And they had a group, they were organized and everything.
Yeah, they did.
I forgot their name though. Les écharpes rouges.
So what? Yeah. So Denny, do you know about that group, or do you know like what happened after they started retaliating against the Gilets jaunes?
I did not follow the movement that much. I was in the US at that time, but what happened is, it was kind of like a little civil war inside of Paris, and as we're seeing now in the US, we had a lot of small businesses looted and hit by this. But like it kind of comes with, I guess, fortunately with the package. And people tried to defend themselves as much as they could with what they had. So either creating little structures to protect your store, or having even sometimes a few friends come with you to protect your business, make sure that nobody's gonna coming and destroy and steal everything. So that was
foulard rouge, by the way.
Foulard rouge. Foulard rouge.
What does foulard mean?
It's kind of like a scarf.
Kind of like same as the écharpe, yeah.
Okay, so red scarves. Okay.
It's a thin scarf.
Then okay. Oh my god. Fucking.
You know what I'm talking about?
Get out of here. That's what a name to name yourself as like a small business owner and who's opposed to protesting. That's so like unself-aware. That's insane.
So
anyway,
hey, you gotta look good. You gotta look good.
Well, I think maybe we should look for parallels between the movements, and maybe we should learn from what happened in France, and that can help on both sides, right? You can maybe educate governors on how to properly do things and learn from the mistakes of what happened in France, and on the other hand, you can have protesters learn from how they handled themselves in France as well.
And not in this country.
I'm hearing some crazy echo. It might be Keon, but
Keon's gone, I think.
no, he's there.
Oh,
okay, the echo's kind of, it's still there. Keon, if you can either put your phones on or lower your volume, I'd appreciate it. But anyway, I'll let you guys comment on that.
Also, so Kia, what you just said about that whole situation is one of my favorite kind of economists, Robert Reich, he was talking about how, it's really easy to kind of try and compare ourselves to other countries and to try and apply their situations to our situation. But it might be easier to look at our past and things like times like the 60s, where there's a different, where it's kind of easier to apply to our situation, and to kind of look back at that time in history in terms of activism.
That's a very good point. And there were
ignoring our own issues and try to draw parallels with unrelated variables. right?
Zara, I love that you quoted Robert Reich. I actually took his class at Cal, and I love him, and he's a really good Twitter follow if you're into that. He's got a lot of really good, interesting sound bites. I have a topic / question and something I've been thinking about and talking about with my friends from college, and I'm just curious to hear what you guys think, because I don't really know the right answer, and I think it's super complicated. But I'm wondering what you guys think that the appropriate role and space is as, and I'm speaking because there's no Black people right now, but as, non-Black people of color or white people, like where the line is, what the appropriate space to occupy is, because I think it's a really sensitive topic. And I was talking with my friend who's Black, and she said that she found it triggering to see so many white people posting like an Instagram status, and she was like, where were these people caring until the last 3 days when everyone's posting, and it's suddenly like people saying, if you're silent, you're not doing anything. And, do these people feel like if they don't post like some graphic that people are going to think they're racist? Where's this coming from? What are they doing besides that? And then like, I've felt really conflicted personally because I'm seeing a lot of people with a sentiment, if you're silent right now, you're complicit. And I didn't post on Instagram because I've been grappling with where is my correct space as a non-Black person of color, right? But at the same time, like, I wouldn't say I'm silent. I'm talking about it with my friends, with you all, with my family, which I think is really impactful. And I've made a monetary donation. I'm not like screenshotting it and posting it, but, and there's also like certain levels of performative activism. And, is that even a thing? Isn't posting impactful at any degree, or is it not? And does it drown out like the actual message and intent behind things? I don't know the answer to all of this. It's just something that I've been thinking about and talking about a lot with my friends, because a girl in my sorority posted in our alumni page, like, this is my donation, please match me. I know we're all financially capable. She donated $200, and it was a public thing, and then people were feeling pressured. And I, on one end, was like, that's awesome, because a lot of people did donate, and it was like thousands of dollars of donations, and then other people felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's like the intent was good. I think the intent is usually good, but like, I don't know what's appropriate. And then even furthermore, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, like, I donated to a Black Lives Matter Matters global network website, and I was poking around and looking at their artwork by Black artists, and I saw a t-shirt, and it was like a nice Black Lives Matters, like it was like yellow and white, and I thought it was kind of like uplifting, and I don't know, I liked it, and I support the statement. I think Black Lives Matter, right? So I bought the shirt, and I was talking with a friend, and she was like, you're a Karen, you can't wear that, you're not Black.
Wow.
And I was like,
garbage.
I mean, I'm not wearing a shirt that says I'm Black or I believe I'm Black.
That's actual
the
garbage.
Statement says Black Lives Matter, and I believe that. And I think it's impactful for us non-Black folk to wear that statement proudly and put it out there. But I may be wrong. Maybe there are Black people that would feel uncomfortable seeing me wear that shirt.
So,
I don't know. Then I was like, I'll just wear it inside. I won't wear it in public.
What better to do on a complicated question than go on a break before answering it and leaving the audience on a cliffhanger? So we're going to go on a quick break. We're going to refresh up. We're going to think about our answers to that question if we haven't already. And it'd be nice to hear from everyone on this one. So let's think hard, answer that question, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back, and we have some juicy responses. Unfortunately, Danny and Zara are not able to give their responses firsthand, but we did hear their responses, and we're going to repeat them as best we can. Does someone want to give a go at Zara's answer, or should I just repeat it?
No, you go.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, Zara was saying that you shouldn't try to lead the movement and take away voices from Black activists. You should try to support them. As long as you're in solidarity, then you're doing the right thing. And back up if you're making a social media post, like if you have something to back it up with, then all the better. I think that's the general gist of what she was saying. And then does someone want to summarize Danny's answer? I wasn't too keen on that.
I feel like he was just saying that whatever you do, there's impact behind it, even no matter how small of an act it is. Like, even if you're just making an Instagram story or making a Facebook post, that you're adding to the movement and the positive momentum towards change. And, you know, even though it might not be the biggest gesture, someone will see it and maybe it will encourage them to get involved or make them think about it. And it's like, it's positive regardless of what you do.
Right.
I think like that's what he said. I think that was the gist of it.
No, that's fair. I heard basically everything you said there. I want to answer this question with something a little controversial, and maybe it might come off as condescending, but I have to get my voice out there. I think that type of response is emotional. I don't think it's a logical response. I think that we are allowed to feel however we want, but we choose how we act on our feelings. I don't mean to get all armchair psychologists here, but the fact is that you have to look at what the person is doing and what their intentions are. You know, buying a Black Lives Matter T-shirt, in your example, that comes off as supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, and it sounds like your intention is to positively, you know, like I said, support the movement. And when you start creating restrictions and limitations and start policing people, it's like, oh, you can't actually wear this shirt. You start labeling them as a Karen. Like, first of all, that label is a misnomer for you, Cameron.
I'm clearly not a Karen.
You're not a Karen.
I'm a Cameron, not a Karen.
Not a Karen.
I'm a Cameron.
So that's
a slogan for the.
I'm a Cameron, not a Karen.
Yeah.
I do like these quotes for everyone on the show, so that'll be your quote. I'm a Cameron. I honestly think those responses are shallow. They're superficial. They're not reading between the lines. They're an emotional reaction, which, by the way, it's okay to have, like, you know, like just not be in control of your reactions to your emotions right now. I understand that it's a troubling time for many people, especially those who are directly affected by this or have directly been affected by this. So I come with empathy and compassion for those who are reacting out like this. But if I'm going to be honest, you do whatever you want. If you're showing support, show support. If you're not showing support, don't show support. You don't need to feel pressured to do something, right? And if somebody wants to look at their friendship differently because of this, look, fine, so be it. You have control over the reactions to your emotions. So if you want to rebuild that friendship at a different time, rebuild that friendship, fine. If you want to explain yourself, if you feel the need, you have to, fine. But if you don't feel like you have to explain yourself, don't. As long as you're comfortable with your actions, I don't think you should be letting others tell you what to do. So Daria was saying, sorry, go ahead, Cameron.
No, I was going to say, I totally agree. And for the record, like, it was more of like a conversation, and it ended up being a fruitful conversation. And like, by no means was it like, you're a Karen, I'm not friends with you because you wore the shirt. But I think on the, like, more of my question on this topic was not like what's right for us to do, but more like, I don't know. I'm thinking about Zara's response about uplifting Black voices and leaving space for them. And I guess, like, yeah, there's no Black person here, but I'm just curious to, like, yes, we can do whatever we want and we can contribute however we want and we can express our feelings however we want, but being mindful of, like, how is this making the people, like, most affected by this, like the Black community, feel? Like, is it like triggering or upsetting to them? And again, like, I don't know the answer to this, but that's kind of like more where my question was geared towards, is like, what is the right space? Because I mean, I think anyone can do whatever they want, but I think there is probably a correct and sensitive way for us to express and contribute to, like, whatever form of activism we want to. But again, that's more what I was trying to get to. Like, what's appropriate.
Sorry, staying on both of you guys' answers. I was just thinking of because you said the whole intent thing, Kia, and that, like, intent is very, important, right, to you. I feel like even if you're posting something without an intent, it's like just saying like, you know, any press is good press. I feel like if someone's posting something about about this movement positively, then it's gonna circulate somewhere else, and it's like just like we said, like someone else is gonna be motivated to probably do something. So I feel like even though he's probably using it for something else, for cloud or something, it's still gonna go out there. So I think any type of press for this type of movement is good press. So like it's just bringing the message out there. That's the thing. So I completely understand with like people who just go there for like the pictures, like someone who's not really motivated to be there but just wasting their time just to like sort of like get attention. I can see that, but I just feel like at the end of the day, if you're still gonna do something or you're still gonna preach anything about the movement, it's better than not saying anything. So I don't know. That's where I'm talking.
I wanted to clarify my answer as well. Cameron, that was my answer to what do you think people should do. And the reason I gave the answer, do whatever you want, is that, look, you make your friend happy, it doesn't make some random person online happy. You make some random person online happy, some other random person online is upset with what you're doing. You cannot please everyone. And trying to do so is madness. So are there some common things you could be mindful of? Sure. How about you don't use the N-word in your posts? Boom. You're being mindful of a lot of people just by doing that.
Duh.
It's like, well, okay, but I'm saying like just focus on the common sense. Like if you just put hashtag Black Lives Matter, if that's good enough for you and you're happy with that, you don't need to be looking to make a whole post and a whole spiel and you need to go be an activist if you don't want to, right? If you're not motivated by it. If you're like, there are people who feel very strongly about this. I'm one of them actually. And they will go out of their way to try and do something productive. And if they feel they want to do that, let them do that. But if they don't feel that they want to do much, I don't think that there's a right answer of what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, I think the worst is like on Instagram, you see a lot of like people right now, they have like 17 posts in a row about like Black Lives Matter. This is too much, like your silence is deafening. And it's like, well, just because I'm not posting doesn't mean I'm not supporting the movement.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
I'm gaining all the information that's happening and I'm trying to make my own opinion about it and seeing what I can do to fully support it, not just say, oh, if you don't post, you don't care. It's like, no, that's totally wrong. I do care. I'm just gathering all the information to make sure I know how to support it and to make sure that it goes somewhere productive. Like, that's why, like, if I want to support, I'm going to support, like, either a donation, like, to a Black Lives Matter movement or, like, donate to Kia Stream that he's donating to the Minneapolis, Black Lives Matter movement.
Freedom Fund.
That'll directly help, Like, just posting your silence is deafening, hashtag Black Lives Matter, and me not doing that doesn't mean I don't care.
That's like exclusive. It excludes people who are on your side, and that's like the biggest shame. Yeah. Like, why are you isolating
within a group that all agrees? So we all agree, and then you're dividing people that don't want
to
speak out on it yet.
In my opinion.
It's exactly.
And
you're trying to cause conflict for no reason.
We exist elsewhere than on the internet. In fact, we exist. This much on the internet.
It means that your bubble is online. Exactly.
Yeah, you talk to people, you donate your time, your money, your effort, like that. That is just as much as if not more impactful than making an Instagram post. I completely agree with you. I think that
I wanted to touch upon what Cameron's saying, actually, the virtual space. And to answer Cameron's question off the bat, I think that, sending money is the appropriate space. Anything other than that virtually is kind of a waste of time. And I'll back up.
Earlier, you were saying donation is a waste of time.
Yeah, you do.
No, earlier, I was saying that if all you do is funnel money, throw money at something, but not participate as well. If you're missing that component, if you're just funding, then you're not really making as big of an impact as you think you are, even if it's hundreds and thousands to. Because look, donating for a Trump campaign, there's still Trump out there on the field. If he wasn't there and you're just throwing money at the Trump party and he never went out and did any speeches, nothing would ever become, right? So that was why I was saying that in that context, is donate and get out there. Like that's like a dual responsibility, right? But yeah, in the virtual space, I'd say that. But I do want to like all that noise that's come from this. I really think that it really shows how people are. It really shows people's priorities is their image.
Yeah.
And it really shows that image is dominant. Image is all in this country, especially this country. Image is everything. Is whenever anything happens, the first reaction you have is not to should I be on what side or whatever. The first thing is how do I maintain my image. So that's one thing I wanted to get to, and also that, of course, all the people that and I might be attacking some of your friends, Cameron, but I mean, I don't know, but all these people that give shit for any reason, even the slightest shit about that, it's all the impotent people. It's all the impotent people that care about image, because social media it's not a conversation. It's a list of opinions that you read and respond to. That's not a conversation. That's not a dialectic. So I wanted to cap it off by saying people are so drowned in their own rhetoric that they lose sight of what they can actually do, and it just ennobles their impotency. That's all they're doing. How can I feel the most comfortable doing nothing? That's staying home. And how can I maintain my image by doing nothing? So
yeah,
I don't really care about those people. They can say whatever they want about me. They can say whatever. They're not interesting. That buzz, they'll die off like the flies they are. Their voices will die off like the flies they are.
So definitely that's a subset of what I was saying for sure, that your presence online, that's a superficial aspect of activism. And using your voice for change is essential in activism. But I don't think that one facet, like what you tweet, it does not define your actions, pro or con, for the movement.
I did want to I forgot to mention this. The reason why I discredit social media too is a lot of people like to say, oh, but it spreads the message. Yeah, so do 400 other different kind of platforms spread the message. For one of them, big media spreads the message. The whole point is not to look at the platform that you're receiving information from, because they're all corrupt. They're all messed up. They all have that, the whole point is to, and people talk about, when people say that about social media, it's like social media is the number one way of spreading the news, the number one way of spreading the message, right?
Yeah, it's disconnected from reality, where half of people over 50 are getting their news from the cable TV, for example. Yeah.
For example, so there's a lot of different outlets to receive news from. So let's stop pretending that social media is like the torchbearer, because it's not. And also, given that, whatever information received, you should be able to analyze and deduce conclusions for yourself. So I don't need to go on social media and read. I don't need to get my news from there. All I need to do is hear about it. There is a black man that was asphyxiated to death under the knee of this police officer. That's all I need to hear. It's like I don't need to hear the nitty details. I don't need to hear the noise. I don't need to hear your opinion. I don't need to hear what I don't need to hear how me buying a T-shirt is stupid. It's not. It's actually Cameron. That's a lot more than people. That's a lot more of an effort than people make. So I hate that.
Exactly.
I get shit on for that. I super hate they get shit on for that.
Yeah.
But it's also not Cameron making an effort. It's something she believes in. She's not like, oh, I need to make this effort to like seem that I'm caring. It's like she wanted to do that because she believes in her own opinion and like what she's right about. It's not like, oh, I have to make this effort.
No, I mean, I think misunderstood what I'm saying. It's effort as in like consciously said and made a decision to sit down at your computer and order it. That's effort. That's human. That's you moved your body. For me, that's anything that moves your body's effort. Is and your mind too. Like I'm moving to do this. That's you exacting effort. L'effort. That's French definition.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, like people that are like, oh, Cameron, oh, you're such a Karen for buying this T-shirt you can't even wear. It's like, no, she didn't buy just to like support. She bought it because she believes in it and that she wants people to know that she believes in it.
Totally, and I think that wearing a shirt like that openly and like, you know, just walking around on a regular day, perhaps when this protest not has blown over, but
that's
it's not
a platform
like
by which to spread the
everyone's
message.
talking about. I'm going to continue to wear it. It's going to show that statement. Also, like it was a monetary contribution to a Black artist that made the shirt. It was like significant, wasn't a $5 t-shirt, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know. I actually think doing things like that is super impactful and awesome. I think that the more that it's normalized to be sporting that statement like on a regular day, just like, oh, this is a t-shirt that I'm wearing, and it's like, I think that's really impactful and great. I think if every white or non-Black POC person was willing to, you know, make that statement, that it would be very impactful. I mean, that's the thing. It's being marginalized as like, if you listen to the way that conservative groups talk about Black Lives Matter, they say it's a Black terrorist organization. Like, that's the way it's being profiled. So I think that just trying to uplift the movement and, you know, take away from that stereotype is impactful in itself. So not wax poeticking myself, but I just, yeah, I was annoyed by that.
I don't even know what that expression you just said means, but I'll pretend like I do.
Like, Daria, you know what wax poetic means. I feel like you do it a lot.
I do it a lot.
Yeah. Not a bad way.
Now I want to hear. Oh, okay. Well, thanks.
What does it mean?
Wax poetic. It's kind of like harping on an issue or like speaking about an issue in a like grandiose way.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
All right. Oh, all right.
When people do the bigger picture, when people usually want to see the bigger picture,
that's called wax poetic.
It gets into wax poetics because they start. When you do that, you have to make a lot of generalizations. But I've always seen it used derogatory, not like a pejoratively. Sorry, I've seen it used pejoratively. So.
I don't think it is pejorative though. I feel like it's just like a way of speaking.
Oh, it's like an oral. Okay, yeah.
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 I think it's elegant. I think it's fun, but in that way, I was saying like I wasn't trying to like overly uplift what I did, but just kind of, I don't know. That's my opinion on wearing merchandise from Black Lives Matter personally.
Keon, what's up?
Because we're on this topic, I posted a poem this morning. And I just want to hear you guys'. I didn't post it. I mean, I didn't make it. I just found it, and I thought it was very interesting. And
can you read it?
Yeah, can I read it? And you guys give me your take? Okay, so it's called I Would Start Fires Too. If I kneeled peacefully and was ridiculed and my voice not heard, I would start fires too. If flames were louder than my screams that echoed throughout generations and fell silent on this nation, I would burn down every city out of my frustration. If those who killed my brothers and sisters blamed us for their senseless violence, I too would light a match and show them how it feels to be silenced. Who am I, in a position of privilege, to tell those who are marginalized how to react to oppression, as if their behavior was in response to their trauma the trauma that we have created, and their moral character was what is in question. If I cannot see the fires as a result of voices that have been extinguished needing my attention, I am the one who should be under a microscope. I am the one whose character should be in question.
Who said that?
Emma Zach.
I like that.
So
it resonates with a lot of what we were saying about, you know, this is an appropriate reaction to the injustices that have been ongoing. So I agree with the poem. And it's powerful. I just want
to know where we're at with this, because we're go Daria.
Yeah, no, I wanted to respond to that and actually still tie in a little bit of Cameron's question with it, along with it. I feel that I see a trend in it's dangerous to avoid it, or at least pair it with action, because I see a trend where people instead of, you know, setting fires or, you know, using their body to protest, use your body to protest. I feel like for a lot of people, merchandise or like social media is just the, you know, it's just the bid it's the bid to still fit in. See, I want
facade.
I want to fit in. I still want to fit in, but you get into this weird space where fitting in also means you have to respect the institution that is oppressing, but then at the same time, you know, to save your image individually, you have to kind of attack that institution. So it's this kind of like, and that's where they want us. They want us in that perfect niche where you'll stay, because when you're there, you can't move. You're static. I can't go out and protest because then I'm against the system and all my friends and family will hate me. But and if I voiced my concerns too strongly, you know, then I'll be seen as a lunatic. You know, so they want you in that perfect little box, you know. So yeah, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah, I don't think telling people how to protest is effective. That's kind of the antithesis of a protest. You're literally saying I don't stand with the status quo.
But this is what I understood from this poem. Because right now, okay, also, guys, we have to
I'm not against the poem. Is that what you guys took from that?
I'm for the poem.
I'm for the
poem too. Yeah, I'm for it too.
I'm saying that, like, I like the poem because it just makes you get out there, like, regardless of your. It doesn't really do what, like, all the bullshit surrounding around donations and silence is deafening. All that bullshit surrounds that. It kind of goes way over that, and it's just, you know. And I think that's important. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you, and I just feel like the reason why I like this poem is that I brought myself back to, like, me. Why am I doing this right now? I care about society. I care about people. I believe we're all equals, and I love life. And I feel like during this time when not that many people are doing much because of this coronavirus, if you're not really speaking out towards this, then what are you really doing right now? That's what I just want to know. Like, are you supporting the oppressed system? That's just me. That's just thinking about it. It's like right now, it's a cycle. Every fucking 5 years we protest, and then nothing happens, and then finally something's happening, and people are deciding to stay silent during times where we're not doing that much. We're not even supposed to be out fucking side, but we decided to go outside because we need to prove something. We need to bring our message out there. Bring the message out there. So I just feel like when you guys were talking about how, like, oh, like, yeah, like, you know, you can do whatever you want. Yes, you can do whatever you want. But it shows to me what type of person you are, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Like, not really doing anything, just watching the news and not doing anything.
That's fair.
I just feel like it just shows to me what type of person you are, and I don't want to support that type of person because you're not supporting other. I get it. You have your own life. Everything has to go for, like, you have other things to think about, but
I would say scratch beneath the surface as well. Like, if you have someone like that you're thinking of, you know, ask them, what do you think about this? What are you doing about it? Before making a judgment.
Of course, of course not. But that's why literally this morning, I texted my friends. I said, hey guys, this is what happened. He posted a video on our group chat of Batman, because there was that fucking video of Batman walking through the protests. And I was like, okay, there was like 6 people in the chat. I was like, listen to me. I'm not here in this chat today to get a cheap laugh. If you want to support the movement, talk about the movement, and, like, do something about it, please let me know, because I would be down to talk about stuff instead of putting cheap laughs and, like, try to forget what's going around us. Because I'm not trying to forget what's going around us. I'm trying to keep the topic alive and relevant, because I don't want to be getting cheap laughs of something that's related to the protest but doesn't have any correlation to the protest. Like, I just feel like people are too afraid to express themselves because of the fact, like we were talking about, Daria, about, like, image. Like, people like have this mentality, but they've been under this type of oppression for so long that they don't want to lose that. You know, they don't want to lose that comfortability. They don't want to sort of push for a change. They don't want that. So,
well, Kian, I have a bit of an answer, I think. Okay. This is just your group chat with, like, your homies, right?
Yeah, this is a group chat with my homies.
I'm not calling out any of your homies personally,
no worries.
But I just feel like you overestimate that a lot of people who live around the world don't have opinions. Like, they need to be fed knowledge, and they need to be spoon-fed, oh, this is what I should think about this. They don't critically think. Or they're just detached, and that's what a lot of people would call privilege. Like, let's say they're busy, their jobs aren't affected, or they're at home and they are financially dependent on someone, and they don't have to care. Like, it's very possible those are the cases, and yeah, you could absolutely judge their character on that. But there are a lot of people who don't care about this movement as much as we do. They wouldn't sit down and talk about it for 2 hours. They just don't give a shit, and I think that's very possible.
But that gives that, but that goes to show.
That's what I'm saying.
To me, like, I don't know how I can connect or relate to something.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
can't
that's
talk
fair,
about
man.
this
That's
huge-
fair.
Right.
That's fair.
It makes no sense to me how you can sit around and not choose a side and just watch things happen.
But that's
it really
that's
makes
what happens.
No sense
Yeah.
to me. It's like, because this is, I mean, what else is there to do right now besides thinking about your work and go back home?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to think about right now. So I don't understand if you're someone who preaches humanity, who preaches social equality, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing the small?
Yeah, well, especially if they do that,
smallest
of
little
course. Yeah, especially
like
if that's the
Like,
case.
I don't even care how big it is. I don't care if you post something on social media and don't have an intent for, like, or don't really care about it. But like, you doing something and posting something will have other people go towards that. It's no bad media. No media is bad media. Like, bad media. There's no such thing as bad media, in my opinion. And
Sure.
like certain, it's just like, it's the message is out there. People know what's going on, and I just feel like if you're just sitting there not doing anything, then you're not. I mean, what are you doing?
I wanted to touch on one final thing.
Is it different from what Keon? Because I just wanted to add a sentence or two.
Add a sentence.
I wanted to say, following with Keon saying about not doing, you're not doing that thing. I mean, yeah, I think we see in these situations, we see very clearly the people that write and the people that talk, and we see very clearly the people that do. So those who write and talk, they can sit down and theorize all day, and that's good let them have their little fun, spinning around in circles, playing mental games with themselves. But then, leave it to the doers. That's all.
Sure. Yeah, the Home Depot, brought to you by the Home Depot. Anyway, so the point I wanted to make just real quick before we end here is about how COVID ties into all this. So I know a lot of people, myself included, who would not go to a protest because I don't want to catch COVID and pass it on to, like, my mother, my grandmother, my father. Yeah. So if you are going to a protest, you're at risk, because even if you wear a mask, that isn't protecting you from actually getting COVID. If you're not aware, that only prevents you from spreading it. So yes, you should definitely wear a mask to avoid spreading it, but just understand, if you're within 6 feet of anyone, you are at risk of getting COVID from anybody who is not wearing a mask. So I think that's a valid reason to not want to protest right now and go out on the streets right now. But there are different ways of protesting, it ties back into what I was saying. It's like, protest whatever you're comfortable with. Just because your friends are pressuring you to go to a live protest and they say, what are you, too much of like a baby to not go? You don't really believe in this movement. Like, listen, you have to do what you're comfortable with. And I think avoiding a pandemic is a fair argument for not going to an in-person protest right now.
I agree with that. And I think furthermore, I mean, this is just an unfortunate and upsetting, like, negative feedback loop, but we know that Black and brown communities are disproportionately being affected by COVID transmission rates, right? Like, they have higher percentage. And, I know there are a lot of non-Black people that are also going out to protest, but it's like, it's predominantly Black communities and families that are going to be affected by the spread that inevitably is going to come from these large gatherings.
There's going to be a second spike, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah,
absolutely. That we can't even gather with more than one person in a place, and then there's thousands of people together, screaming and being tear gassed and like all of the whatever. I mean, y'all know, like, there's going to be an inevitable spike in all of these cities. So
You know,
it's
I applaud
unfortunate.
the people who do risk themselves and go out there. I think that's noble. And I guess I'm privileged in a way to choose not to, because at the end of the day it doesn't affect me, and I recognize that. But you know, it's really amazing that these protests are still going on at the scale they are with a pandemic, and I think that is very powerful as well. That we're willing to get in a gathering, not to protest COVID and say I want to go to a barber shop, but to say I deserve to live, and I should be allowed to not be afraid when I'm walking on the street. So I think that's very powerful in and of itself. Does anybody have any closing thoughts before we wrap up today's podcast? Which, by the way, it's been our longest so far.
Oh yeah, in 2 hours.
Just believe in what you preach. I feel like, I don't know. Just don't. That's my final. Don't
be fake.
half-ass things. Yeah, don't be fake. Don't half-ass things. If you're trying to commit yourself into something, fully commit. And yeah, man.
And back it up. I want to add to that. Back it up with action.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough. Without action, it's not enough.
Okay.
And also, don't be afraid to call out people who are acting racist or with prejudice. You know, just
that's a lesson for
feel like
always.
I feel like calling out and not letting people talk with hate in their mouth is definitely something that people should definitely be practicing. Once you hear something or see something that is against what you believe in, morally, ethically, socially, then you should definitely speak out.
Yeah, you know what? I think you just gave me an idea for a future podcast, so thank you, Keon. All right. Thank you all for joining me today. Cameron, for your first time, thank you so much for being on. My returning veterans, Keon, Daria, Baptiste, thanks for being on as always. To Danny and Zara, thank you for being on earlier. I know that it's late where they're at. It's like 9 p.m. They want to spend time with their families. They want to eat. So thank you for being here. I hope if anyone tuned in, people tuned in. If you tuned in, I hope you I hope you learned something from it, because I learned a lot just by talking to you guys. And I'm glad we had this conversation when we did. Who knows? We might even do a part 2, because there will be developments, and I'm sure we'll have different perspectives. So look out for a part 2 in the future, and hopefully with some good news, right? Otherwise, this is the end of the podcast. You've been in tune with Kia Joon. Have a wonderful day.